carried. Thank you. And we'll move on to my report. That's the next item, yes it is. And as I've identified in there, May has been a very busy month for all councillors, with the LTP hearings dominating proceedings, and obviously working through the myriad of issues that has raised. The drinking water supply, as I said, I've asked management to focus the next report on the work required to further reduce the chlorine being added to the system. So that's that regular approach to just keeping the foot on the pedal, as it were. And so I really welcome the announcement from the Chief Executive about the appointment of Helen Beaumont and her ability to report to us through the Chief Executive directly. I mean, I think it's a very good reporting regime, and it's going to see action taken. I think often preliminary assessment work that's necessary isn't seen as action, but I can assure you, if we can switch off wellheads and that allows the pump not to be chlorinated, recognising that there are certain pressure levels that have to be maintained, then that achieves part of the purpose, and we're on our way to getting to chlorine free. So I can reassure councillors that work is going on very hard behind the scenes. I was more than disappointed to be told the cost of reinstating the town hall had gone over budget. It was very late advice. Only a month before we were told it was on track. And we were put under pressure to sign off on the additional funding because it was we needed to sign contracts for the final piece of work. The media were going to be briefed on site in June, but inattention, and I'll take responsibility for that, to the PX release date created a false impression that we were holding this back. There was no intention. It was always going to be released this month. And so I've asked the Chief Executive to ensure that release recommendations are now included in all PX papers, and she has actioned that request. As I've said on many occasions, the total project is still well under what a brand new facility would have cost. We've saved a heritage building, and the CSO has a permanent home. I think there's been some misleading commentary which has suggested that this reduces the amount that's available in the Performing Arts Precinct. Nothing could be further from the truth. The additional funding for this has not come from the Performing Arts delivery side of thing, which still has the same amount of money on budget for the completion of the building on the other element, the other part of the Performing Arts Precinct. So the rest of my report is all the good news, and I'm happy to take any questions. Vicky.
One that I didn't think was quite such good news was the statement on the public transport, that the regional public transport plan that we had a workshop on. What concerns me is that this council has already asked that that committee seek full electrification of the public transport fleet by a certain date. So we understand that it can happen tomorrow, but there needs to be a timeline by which it does happen. So will that go to the joint committee, and what further possibility is there for the public to be involved in attempting to change the model that we currently operate, which is very much a race to the bottom in terms of public transport?
Yeah, so the what the joint committee members have been given as an early draft, and that's what we've workshopped. So all of the workshop ideas, and I can say that Christchurch City will be promoting the electrification of the bus fleet as part of that. They'll come back to the joint committee on the 20th of June for consideration, and then it goes out for public consultation. So there'll be a very a significant period of time available for public consultation, and we will do our bit to ensure that that is publicised widely and that people do have their say.
Great. And is that run by the joint committee or is that run by ECAN?
It's run by the joint committee on this occasion,
right,
which has the ECAN cannot delegate the decision, but they can delegate the formalities, and so there will be a hearings panel established at the joint committee.
Won't be the whole joint committee that do the submissions.
I doubt it. It'll be a hearings panel, I imagine. Right. Mike, do you remember? Who's that? Do you remember whether? No, I just can't remember the numbers that are on the hearings panel, but they haven't established the hearings panel yet.
But there will definitely be a opportunity for a wide range of
the public hearings, public submissions will be called for, and there will be a hearings panel established, and they will hear the submissions.
Do that hearings panel have to be members of the Joint Public Transport?
I don't know the answer to that question, but I expect that they will be.
I'm happy to volunteer if they don't.
No, I volunteered to nominate you to the committee, and you refused to be part of it. So I'm not going to support your nomination to the hearings panel.
Thank you. Oscar Alper's advice to newly elected members was question everything. So with the town hall, can we put in place some kind of structure, or either an existing one with one of our standing committees or a new one that looks at applying the blowtorch in a respectful way with staff? But I get pretty frustrated over, the inflation bit of sleight of hand.
Yeah, no, I agree entirely, and that's why I've already discussed with councillors the concept of establishing a capital program committee, which is sole focus is the capital program, all of it, and that's the large projects, and then the programs of work that sit underneath it. So yes, no, we've certainly picked up, and that's why I said in there we need to lift our game on monitoring the capital program, and that's why I've raised that with councillors. I've raised that with the chief executive. She also thinks that's a very good idea, and it's, I think, an important way forward. And it's the issue in relation to this matter, though, was that, as I understand it, the chief executive is going to sort of provide some feedback on the how this happened, and as you also know, part of the resolution of this particular matter was to agree a new process for signing off on the contingency, which is now no longer at the project management level. It is now lifted right up to the general manager level, so that it can't just be signed off.
Yeah, I agree, and we just need straight communication, like the say what you mean what you say stuff.
It's tight,
really frustrated,
tight controls is what we want to see from a governance perspective, and a good clear reporting structure that is across the board. At the moment, we've got different projects reporting to different committees, and I think that having and I've sort of set a Rottweiler approach at the head of it will. But as I agree with you, entirely respectful. But there is a provision in relation to how. There is a provision in terms of how it's reported. So we've got to tighten up. Yanni.
Thank you. You in your report make reference to the red zone futures. I just wondered if you could just give us a very quick explanation around the decision making around the red zone futures, particularly because we are getting lobbied as individual councillors for certain projects, and just wondered if you could just clarify in terms of our role as elected members as a city council in terms of what happens there versus Regenerate and the minister, because I think it would be quite beneficial for people to have a clear understanding.
Sorry, ask that again.
So for the red zone futures, the Otakaro Avon River corridor,
the Otakaro
is open for feedback, and obviously we've been getting a number of emails from individuals concerned over certain projects, whether they should be in. So can you just give us a kind of clear understanding of the process around the decision making around the projects that are going to be happening in the red zone going forward, and what our role is?
No, that's not what the exhibition's about. So I honestly thought that Regenerate Christchurch had already reported to us on the process going forward, but it's not my function to report on the process going forward as part of this report. We've had Regenerate Christchurch in front of the committee yesterday.
Well, as I understand it, we're not making decisions on the future of the red zone as a council. That's a matter for Regenerate Christchurch.
No, it's not. It's a matter for signing off by the Minister.
Okay.
It is a process that's under the Greater Christchurch Regeneration Act, and what Regenerate Christchurch is doing is developing a regeneration plan which will be signed off by the Minister, not by the council.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we will be submitting on it, obviously. David.
Just carrying on from that subject with Yanni, what is the process then? I mean, Yanni's quite clearly indicated that a number of us are being lobbied by certain groups about projects that may or may not be in the program at the moment. What is our role in that particular function there, where we are now starting to hear a lot of noise from certain sectors of the community over the plan that Regenerate have come up with? Do we have any role or input to say to Regenerate?
Look, clearly there's a misunderstanding. Regenerate Christchurch are not deciding the particular projects that are going to be developed on the site. They're developing a regeneration plan which allows for certain projects to proceed in particular areas, should they be resourced to do so. But that's a separate program. It's a separate process after the regeneration plan is resolved. So they're out there with the exhibition now about the specific areas. They've said that the green spine will be a given in terms of the regeneration plan. We can take that as read. There are 3 areas which they've asked for further input from the community in relation to their views about what uses those particular pieces of land could be put to. So I think that one of the issues that's come up more than once is the temporary use, and I have to say that I'm not entirely fussed with the process that sits around temporary use. We do need a stronger utilisation of the red zone for temporary purposes for up to 5 years in different areas. Some of these project decisions won't be made for years, in terms of the permanent use in some of the areas, depending on how long it takes to fundraise for particular options that may or may not be able to proceed. So, but look, why don't we just get Regenerate Christchurch in? We'll get them in front of the council at a meeting such as this, perhaps the next one before the submissions close on the exhibition, and we'll get them to repeat what they have said to different workshops that certainly I've been to out in the community, explaining the process. It's all dedicated to on their website, but I know that not everyone will have read all of the details, so we'll get them into a meeting, we'll get them in front of the live stream, and they can explain the process in front of everyone. All right. Well, does anyone want to move my report? Dion. Hey?
Just quickly wanted to make a comment.
Oh, well,
I'm happy to move it or second it.
Well, you can second it then.
Yeah. Oh no, just quickly, I think the most important thing is that the community understand how these decisions are going to be made. So, I mean, yeah, and what role we have to influence that. So,
Why are you doing? Why?
So, I mean,
On the back of my report, I've just said we'll get Regenerate Christchurch. You've said you don't understand the process.
no, I understand that we'll be asked to give our feedback at some stage
That's
in
right.
terms of a regeneration plan. What I don't understand is how the community, in terms of their feedback to us as elected members, how we incorporate that into our feedback. So whether we have a specific consultation,
Yes, of
whether
course we do. We're strategic.
we do that. So I just think it would be good to give some clarity, given that we are getting a number of emails from people.
I've just
over the
said
process.
we'll bring
Great.
Regenerate Christchurch here next meeting.
Yeah, but it's not to us. I think it's to the community that needs that clarification and understanding.
I'll circulate as well the link to the Regenerate Christchurch website, which has got a dedicated section on the process and what they've described as the braid. You'll also be conscious that it is under the Greater Christchurch Regeneration Act, which has got a clearly specified process, and you can share that, Yanni, with your the people who are asking you, so that they do understand it, and we'll get Regenerate Christchurch in to reiterate it.
Yeah, the irony.
I think it's the process for us to develop our feedback is what I'm asking.
Yes, but we don't need to do that right now, and you don't need to do it off the back of my report. You know, if I hadn't mentioned that I'd been to the opening of the exhibition, you wouldn't have raised any of these issues. So, you know, I'm just wondering whether my reporting is redundant, whether I shouldn't bother. Is that? Yeah. Okay, so it's been moved and it's been seconded, so I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried.